Alright guys, today I'm going to be working on this Honda Odyssey and I'm going to be replacing this alternator right here. So if this is your first time on this channel, I like to walk you through step by step, and that's what I'm going to show you, how to replace this alternator step by step. In order to get to the battery, we have to take this piece of plastic right here off. So let's go ahead and do that. These are just plastic clips and I am just pulling them out one by one. Now that I have that loose, you should be able to just pull it out just like that. All right, so we're here in the battery and we can see it, and there is a actual proper way in how to disconnect the terminals. Let me explain this really quick. This is a good tip. It can save you from hurting yourself. So you have a positive terminal and you have a negative terminal. You always want to disconnect the negative terminal first. This is because when I am touching this negative terminal and I happen to touch the chassis or anything, it's not going to shock me. It's not going to produce any spark. If you was to disconnect the positive terminal, and while touching the positive terminal and you ground yourself, let's say into this rod, into something else in the vehicle, it will arc and it will heat up and you will get hurt. So if you have fuel, if you have anything in your hands, you can catch on fire. And I haven't seen the people, but I have seen the after results of that happening. So you always disconnect the negative terminal first, and then you can move your way to the positive terminal. And since I have a bunch of these laying around, I like to just add these in here just in case this happens to fall back into place or whatever. I am not charging the vehicle up at all. The battery is always disconnected no matter what. So go ahead and loosen this one. There you go. Now there is no power to the vehicle whatsoever. All right guys, so the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to disconnect the serpentine belt. Now there's several tools in the market that you could achieve this with. So of course you have a specialty serpentine belt tool, and you usually have like a crow's foot, or you have some type of way in how to engage into the bolt. Now the bolt that you're going to be releasing the tension with is a 14 mil. So I'm actually going to be using this 14 mil ratchet wrench. All right, so I have attached myself to that tensioner, and now I'm going to just pull back like this, and you can see there's a lot of play now on the belt. Now I just simply remove myself from one of the pulleys, and just like that, there is no tension on this tensioner anymore, and the belt is loose. Now before you remove the belt, you should maybe make a diagram showing how the belt is routed. I will try to have a diagram somewhere on the screen and look that up for you. So like that, when it comes time to putting it back, you understand how it's supposed to route through the pulleys. But make sure to make a note of that and route it exactly the same. Even take a picture if you have to. And because it's a good practice, I pull off the belt and I'm inspecting it to see if there's any tears, if it's worn out, and if it has any cracks. So you should do the same. If you haven't serviced the belt for a while, you should inspect it. It might be time to replace it as well. All right, so now that we have the belt out of the way, you can see the alternator is very easy to get to. You're going to discover that the hardest thing is not actually removing it or unbolting it. It's going to be massaging it or maneuvering it out of this cavity right here. That's going to be the hardest part. So you're going to locate where this wire comes down onto the alternator, and you're going to see there's a bolt. This goes straight to the battery. You're going to want to remove, there's a boot. I moved it out of the way already so we could see the bolt, but there's a rubber boot, and you're going to want to pull up and pull it back, and you're going to see the bolts exposed. You're going to want to remove that bolt right now, and then remove the upper bracket. All right guys, so I just wanted to make a note here It doesn't really matter the combination of tools that you put together to remove the bolt, just as long as you're able to remove it. You can see I have some extensions here put onto the socket so I could access it a little bit easier. But you don't have to do it this way, as long as you could remove it. All right, guys, so here is a little tip. I am going to use this magnet with the extension attached to it to remove this nut. So it makes it a little bit easier because you will drop this trying to remove it. So now that we have this whole wire and everything loose, it's going to give you a little bit of more room so you could access. There's a clip behind the alternator, so you could access that clip. And once I remove it, I'm going to show you exactly how to unhook it. All right, so here is the connector, and you can see that right here, that's the notch that you're going to be pushing. So you're going to have to push down to release the little clip, and then you're going to pull out. It is a tight fit. You might get scratched, but you will be able to remove it as long as you push down and pull back. All right, guys, so I have the alternator in my hand, and I just wanted to show you where is the placement for the bolts. So the alternator sits something like this. You're going to have one here and one in the bottom, okay? So those are the two bolts that you're going to want to release and remove so we can maneuver this out of the way. But if I remember right, I believe I have to loosen this hose right here, this AC hose. We're going to go ahead and loosen the bracket so we could have that all ready. So once I release the bolts and the alternator is ready to come out, I am able to just maneuver it out of here. So we're just going to remove this bracket right here. All right, now that we have this loose, you can see this AC line has plenty of space here, so we could have some movement. And I have released here this line as well. So this is your low side, this is your high side. Now, keep in mind, if you decide to remove this bolt right here, okay, this is attaching this line together. This is under a lot of pressure, so you have to be very careful and cautious when you're dealing with this, because you could have Freon leak all over the place. So I just released the upper bracket. I didn't release this bolt right here, so pay attention when you're doing this. And now there is plenty of room, plenty of space when it comes time to maneuvering the alternator from this area. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this power steering reservoir, and I have just removed it out of this clip. You can see how easily it just comes off. I'm going to pull back here, and it's loose. Now this just gives me just enough room so when it comes time to squeezing the alternator out of here, we could maneuver it out of this little cavity that we have. Now I'm going to remove those two bolts that I explained to you where they were. It's going to be a tight fit here, so we're going to try to film it as best as possible, but you know where they're at, and it's just a matter of just removing those two bolts so you could loosen the alternator. Okay, so you can see I have the alternator loose and it's ready to come out, but what I am also going to do is I'm going to remove this bracket right here. It's going to give us a little bit more clearance when it comes to pulling up and out towards the left side, and it's just a little bolt that's holding the bracket to the cylinder head. So we're just going to remove this bracket as well, and it should give us a little bit more clearance and make this job a lot easier. And again, the bracket that we're removing is this upper one right here. It attaches to the cylinder head and to the alternator. It's like a connecting bracket or an extension that mounts the alternator to this fixture right here, to this location. Okay, so this is what the bracket looks like. This part attaches to the cylinder head. The alternator mounts right on here, and you're just going to remove this bolt right here and remove the bracket. It just makes it easier, so when it's time to remove the alternator, it's not in the way. You could leave it attached to the alternator by removing this bolt, but you're gonna see that there is so much things in the way that this bracket actually gets in the way when it comes to maneuvering and turning the alternator and trying to extract it from this cavity. All right, guys, so we're going to remove this reservoir right here, this coolant reservoir, and what it's going to consist of is just one of those plastic clips that attaches to it like that. Now I have it loose, and you're going to notice in the bottom it has this clip right here. I'm trying to do this so you could see what I'm doing, and then you're going to pull up. You're going to see I have this reservoir loose, because what I'm going to try to do is move the alternator to this corner and maneuver it out of here. Alright guys, so I have removed the coolant reservoir. If you can see all the way down here in the bottom, the hose, I have put a hose clamp on it. If you don't have a hose clamp, you could fold this in half and zip tie it together, or you could just let the coolant drain out of it. It's all up to you how you want to do that. But now you can see there's a large opening right in here, and this is what the coolant reservoir looks like. I just spilled a bunch of coolant on the floor. You're going to have, this is the hose in the bottom. You're going to have to remove that and then pinch it. And if you remove it quick enough and turn it on its side, you won't lose all the fluid out of it. So I'm just going to set this to the side. All right guys, so I'm going to just grab this reservoir and turn it to the side like this. You don't have to do it like this. You could disconnect all this and you will lose your power steering fluid, and you will cause a big mess. Or you could do it like this. You do run the risk of, if the hoses are really old, they're going to be brittle and they're going to break. But if they're brittle and they're going to break, it's time to replace them regardless. So I am just taking a little shortcut, and I'm holding it like this. You can see this line, it's pulled to the side, and I could just maneuver this. Okay, so there we go. Got it out. So that's why I wear the gloves, because this would have been my skin. And yes, you do get hurt doing this stuff, but you do it yourself. All right, so now it's time to place it back in there, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to just do everything in reverse. All right guys, you can see I have changed clothes, and that's simply because it is Florida, and in the middle of recording this video, it started to rain, and it's actually been a couple of days since I started this project. So I'm going to try to wrap things up and install this alternator to show you guys. So I just want to address that, because you know, you guys might be wondering, how come you changed clothes? It's because it's the next day or a couple of days after. So this is a step I didn't do, and I suggest you do it when it comes time to install it, or even before you remove it. I skipped this because I figured we would have enough room, but if you look right here, I have removed the power steering hose, and that hose goes to right here. Okay, this is the top of the power steering. This side is not under pressure. This is what goes from the reservoir into the pump, but when you remove it, keep in mind it will make a mess, and you'll get power steering fluid everywhere. So I didn't want to do that in the beginning because I wanted to keep the mess down, but it was a lot easier to remove it and then install the alternator because this hose wasn't in the way. Okay, so we can see I have the alternator right where it sits. Now I'm going to install the bolt that mounts to the bottom bracket, and it just simply just goes in and threads in. So I'm just going to do everything in reverse. So everything you did before, just do it in reverse. So this part of the video you can't see too much because my hands are in the way, my big head's in the way, and the flashlight's in the way. So just kind of use this as a reference, just if you get lost. Everything is just being installed back the way you removed it. So just take your time and you'll figure it out. So now that I have the alternator in place and I have the bottom bolt on, I didn't tighten it all the way because I wanted it to be able to pivot so I could move it into the right position, because Now it's time to install this bracket. Now the bracket, if you remember how you removed it, one piece goes like this and the other one goes on the other side, and there's one bolt that's longer than the other. Of course, one goes in one side and one goes in the other. So since I left the bottom bolt loose, it's going to let me pivot this into the right position so I could align this. And then once I have all three of the bolts on, then I'm going to tighten everything down to make sure it's in the right spot. Because if I was to tighten this too tight, I wouldn't be able to pivot this. So just a little tip. So I know you guys can't see much right now, and like I said, my hands are in the way, everything's in the way, but I am doing my best to help you guys out here. We have the bracket on this side, and this is what I was talking about. Since the bottom bracket is, the bolt is loose, I can maneuver this into the right spot, and I can install the last bolt here. So I'm going to do exactly that. Okay, so now that I have all three bolts in the place that I need them to be, now I'm going to snug everything up and tighten it really good, and the alternator is technically installed now. Alright guys, this is a quick tip. It is time to install the nut that sits on top of the alternator. This goes straight to the battery. Now this is what I like to do. I like to attach it to a magnet like this, and I don't put it in the center. I put it off the center, and I'm basically just going to place it on top and hold it down, and the bolt or the nut will stay behind, and I should be able to install it very easy. So there it is, it sits in place. So now that we have the cable installed right here and we installed the nut, don't forget about the plug that goes right behind here. It goes right there. Okay, we're going to plug that in now. All right, so now it's time to install the belt. So now that I have the alternator installed and I have the belt, I'm just gonna double check, make sure all the pulleys and everything is sitting correctly. I'm just making sure that the belt is routed the right way and it's sitting in the grooves of the pulleys and it won't sling off once I start the car. So take your time in this part, just have a good visual inspection, and then the parts that you cannot see, you can see right here, this is the belt. I like to run my fingers along the edge of the pulley, and I like to just inspect it underneath to make sure it's in the right groove. So right now I'm doing the harmonic balancer, and I'm touching the AC compressor, and I can feel everything feels just right. So I am ready to start this baby. All right, so we can see the alternator is charging once again. We're at 14.4, which is excellent. So, and just in case you were wondering how did I set up my meter to be able to measure this, I simply went to volts and then I selected DC, direct current. And that's what the vehicle produces. It produces direct current. So you measure from the positive terminal to the negative, and then you'll be able to determine if the alternator is charging or not. Okay, so we are all done. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. If you liked this video and you think it was helpful, please give it a like or go ahead and subscribe, because I am constantly uploading new stuff in the channel and you don't know what you're gonna find. I could be working on the Odyssey or I could be working on something else. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.